Finding Your German Ancestor, Part 1. Hello everybody, this is Richard Walker. I invite you to walk with me on the process of finding your German ancestor. I'm an American. My interest in finding my German ancestor began many years ago when I was in school learning the German language. I kind of knew in my family that possibly some of my ancestors, a few of them at least, might have been Germans. And because I was taking the subject in school, I became interested in seeing who they might have been and where they would have lived. Germany, between 1871 and 1914, covered its largest area. As you can see by looking at this map in front of us, Germany and the neighboring areas of Switzerland and Austria, where German is also chiefly spoken, covered a very large part of Central Europe. If you have any heritage at all from Central Europe, chances are that your ancestors spoke German and possibly were citizens of Germany. Today, we're going to focus on ancestors that lived inside of Germany. When identifying your German ancestor, there are 4 pieces of information that are critical. His or her full name. This is important because in Germany, families tended to carry the same names over and over again. If a daughter or a son died in infancy, the next child, sometimes of the same gender, was given the very same name again. And very often people were named after their parents and grandparents. And sometimes cousins in the same village had the same names. And maybe only one name of the 4 or 5 given names records that are in the records actually distinguish them from the others. So it's important to figure out what his or her full name was. The precise date of at least one major life event. Now that could be a birth, a christening, a marriage, a death, or a burial date. And depending on whether you're looking at church records or civil records, you'll be able to find one of these major life events. The location is precise as possible where one of these or all of these major events took place. And finally, in finding your German ancestor, you need to determine his or her precise relationship in your family tree, and especially to you yourself. Now, let's get onto the road to success. Let's start with what you already have. Gather at home or where you're living whatever records, photographs, family heirlooms you may have at home. Write down on a separate piece of paper or on a handheld device or on your PC any names, dates, places, and or relationships which you can determine which would have some connection to your German roots or your German ancestor. Interview older family members. This can be parents, aunts, grandparents, and your grandparents' siblings and cousins. In a quiet and relaxed setting, ask them to show you any records or photographs or heirlooms which they may have, and carefully note whatever they can remember regarding the family origins, what the family did for a living, what church they attended, or what the family traditions were, etc. Even things which may seem insignificant or inconsequential may later prove to be valuable later on. If you reside today outside of Germany, here are the next steps. Check gravestones and written cemetery records in your own country for information regarding the date and place of birth of your German ancestor. Sometimes you can go into a cemetery and on the cemetery gravestone, it'll tell you the exact town in Germany that your ancestor came from, or in written records which the cemetery may have kept. Check locally kept marriage records, both church and civil marriage records in your own country for the date and place of birth of your German ancestor. Your grandmother or great-grandmother or grandfather may have been married in the country you're living in now or in the country that your parents grew up in, but it may show on the marriage record the town or village that they were born in inside of Germany. And this will help you later on with your research. Go to a library where you live or a nearby archive and read any published local histories. Often Germans travel together in groups to America and to other parts of the world, coming from the same place and settled initially in the same place. A published local history may reveal where this place was in Germany, or it may even contain a short biography on your own personal family. This will save you a lot of time and will help you to immediately get your bearings in Germany. Check local government naturalization papers showing where your ancestor obtained his or her local citizenship. These records may reveal where your ancestor came from in Germany. In the United States, this was a two-step process, with a document of intent to become an American citizen filed first, and then years later, the actual naturalization papers were issued. These records were kept locally in most places at the county level and in some parts of the United States at the state level. Check any census records which may have been kept in your own country for additional clues. For one thing, it may confirm that your ancestor was German born, but it might also tell you that they were from Austria or another German-speaking country, or they may even tell you the town in Germany, or at least the province in Germany, which they came from. All of this is useful information. Check any passenger lists, which may show where your ancestor came from when they entered the country where you are now living. For North Americans, an example would be records such as the online Ellis Island records, and earlier than that, the Castle Garden online records, which were kept by the state of New York. Additionally, in the United States, passenger records of people coming into the country were kept in Baltimore, in Philadelphia, Boston, New Orleans, and so forth. And it's the same in South America and other places. When departing Germany from 1850 onwards, you should check the Hamburg passenger lists, which are also available online at ancestry.com. Everyone who left Germany from the port of Hamburg, and many, many people did following 1850, they were required to write down as they left the country from Hamburg with the port authority the towns or villages that they had come from in Germany. And this again is valuable information. After exhausting living memory and records and artifacts in your country, finding written records about your ancestor in Germany depends upon the time frame in which he or she lived. There are two separate sets of records which are imperative to look at. They are church parish records, which the Germans call Kirchenbücher, and the birth, marriage, and death records kept by the Civil Registry Office, known as the Standesamt. Each of these record sets has its benefits and drawbacks, and so it is advisable to investigate both. As long as both still exist, please do this. Let's start with the church records first. Parish records were kept by the Roman Catholic Church, the Lutheran Church, the German Reformed Church, which were Calvinists and Huguenots, and by Jewish congregations. They contain christening records, confirmation records for the Protestants when they turned 14 years of age, and burial records, and sometimes family lists. Parish registers started being kept in some places during the late 1500s. In order to find the right parish records, you need to determine which Kirchspiel the town, village, or settlement belonged to where your ancestor lived. A Kirchspiel was simply the jurisdiction that church congregation took in. Very often, a group or a cluster of villages or towns were all covered by one particular Kirchspiel. And so finding out which is the correct one from where your ancestors lived will get you to the books you need to be looking at. Finding the correct Kirchspiel for the town where your ancestor lived can be done either by contacting the parish office today, and thankfully most parish offices today are online with their own website. And the other possibility is by asking them for help, or the other possibility is by consulting Meyer's Gazetteer or Ortslexikon, the 1914 edition. And I will talk more about this in the second part of this presentation. Finding access to the parish register which you wish to look at can be done by finding the website of the church and contacting the office via email, regular post, telephone, or fax and requesting help. Also, you can look for an online version of the parish records at FamilySearch.org, Ancestry.com, Archeon.de, or Matricula. Each of these organizations has a different collection, different parish records, and so it's useful to look at all of them until you may find the ones that you want to look at. The biggest challenge may be reading the Old German script or handwriting. There are many books which explain what to look for and teach how to read the handwriting. I might add that very often the same information is recorded again and again in the same place in each entry or paragraph. The next place to go shopping is the civil registration records kept at the Civil Registry Office, known as the Standesamt. Civil records, births, marriages, and deaths started to be kept in the regions neighboring France soon after the French Revolution, from 1800 up to the present day. These would be places like Baden-Württemberg, Hessen, Rhineland-Pfalz, the Saarland, and to some degree early on in North Rhine-Westphalia, and then that stopped for a while and then picked up again. By 1873, however, all regions of Germany were keeping civil records. These records are kept at the local Standesamt until they are very old, and then in some cases they are transferred to regional government archives. In many places, civil records are available for a fee online. FamilySearch.org and Ancestry.com are additional online sites featuring access to civil records. You can also visit the Standesamt in person. To find the correct Standesamt, consult Meyer's Ortslexikon or Gazetteer, the 1914 edition, and search under the locality where your ancestor lived. It's very specific. It gets down to the nitty-gritty, and it will show even large farms and mills and wherever there was a settlement of more than just a few people. And it will tell you what Standesamt it belonged to, and it will tell you which churches took jurisdiction, both for the Protestants, Catholics, and even the Jewish groups that may have lived in the area. For large cities such as Berlin, there can be more than one Standesamt. Berlin, for example, has 25 Standesämter, and so you would start by inquiring at Berlin Standesamt number 1. Germany has data protection or data privacy laws. Anyone who can prove a relationship can look at records of their ancestors, even recent records, but records are otherwise protected for up to 80 years. And if you're looking for records that have come into being or been created in the last 80 years, like a birth or a marriage record, for example, then you may need to show identification of who you are, and you may be asked for a reason why you want to look at the records. And usually it's sufficient if you tell them that you're looking into your family business or that you're interested in the medical history of your family or something like this. In any event, it's usually not a problem, but just be aware of it. It's called in German Datenschutz. Additional civil records are also kept in archives all across Germany. There are town archives and village and city archives. There are provincial archives and national archives. And these archives contain, but are not limited to, tax records, court records, local census records, manorial records, guild membership rolls, military service records, etc. And these records are useful in places where records have been destroyed or have been lost because of a fire or because of warfare. By going to these records and finding your ancestor listed here, this can fill in some of the gaps, or they can serve as additional proof that you're on to the right track. A very, very valuable tool in Germany are the Ortsfamilienbücher, also known earlier as Ortssippenbücher. An increasing number of localities in Germany offer Ortsfamilienbücher. What they are is a committee of local citizens over a period of many years reconstructs and cross-references all families over multiple generations in a given town and organizes them into alphabetical order. They pore over all known church and civil records, including court records, and include all pertinent information. Some Ortsfamilienbücher are available for viewing online by typing the terms, the name of the town or village that you're from, and then type in Ortsfamilienbücher. Others may be purchased or checked out from a library on an interlibrary loan basis. I'd like to give you some final points before I end, some bits of wisdom that may help you avoid some of the pitfalls that you might otherwise fall into. Become acquainted with the historical, social, and political background where your ancestor lived. This will give you an idea of what may have been happening to your ancestors, or why they may have moved, or what they may have been doing, or why their circumstances changed, sometimes rather suddenly. Make sure you are starting out with valid data. Most assumptions will be proven wrong over time. So verify, verify, verify. Validate the work as you go. Work from the known to the unknown. Don't jump to conclusions or assume certain things to be true. Always validate the work as you go. I've had clients come to me many times over the years, and even in my own family research, where we've had dead ends and we can go no further, or brick walls. It's usually because the information that we have is false, that we're making our assumptions on. And by going back further or closer to the root of the tree, we can find out why the mistakes have been made and correct them before we're able to go further. So always work from solid information, work from the known to the unknown. Written documents can be misleading or downright false. So a healthy dose of skepticism is in order. It's always good to find a second document to support the first. Try, whenever possible, to create a larger composite picture of the extended family which your ancestor belonged to, showing his or her relationship to the others. This may seem like extra work at first, but it quickly pays off. Seek the help and advice of others. Become a member of an online genealogical group specializing in your geographical region. Especially when reading Old German script, 2 sets of eyes are better than just one. Seek inspiration from God. Take time to meditate and reflect as you go along.